Okay, great. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks once again for joining in on a Sunday morning for our regular series on small case managers. And today we have somebody really special with us. We have the fund managers of Omniscience Capital, Dr. Vikas Gupta and Ashwini Shami. Uh, one fact of Omniscience Capital, which I would like to share with all our investors, viewers, is that Omniscience Capital has been one of the very, very early adopters of small case, and in fact, early believers in this power of advisory as a profession. So they have been with us with small case for 4 years, and today we just took this opportunity to celebrate the 4 years of their journey and the investors' journey, how this journey has been all about, and how they see the future of small case journey, continuing the journey, and of course the markets and the outlook and their own experiences of the markets. So the idea here is to get closer to that process where investors can deep dive into the journey of Omniscience Capital and get more context and confidence for the future journey of their investments. So let me quickly introduce the gentleman today we have with us, and then we straight away deep dive into today's webinar. So we have Dr. Vikas with us. Dr. Vikas Gupta is the CEO and Chief Investment Strategist at Omniscience Capital. And of course, he's the founder of Omniscience Capital as well. Vikas has great experience on the global and Indian stock markets both. And I think very early on with his experience in global markets, one thing he realized very early on in his career was that chasing alpha leads to risk and chasing safety leads to alpha. I think this is something which is the crux of Omniscience Capital scientific investment, where the entire world is chasing alpha. Here is one of our managers who has been championing risk management more than chasing alpha, because for him and the firm at large, it has always been that the outcome will always be alpha if you manage your risk well. And Dr. Vikas has been holding BTech from IIT Bombay and MSN doctorate from Columbia University, New York. So this is what Dr. Vikas Gupta brings with him as a experience and a lot of wisdom with him, and which is translated into our investments at Omniscience Capital. We have Ashwini with us. Ashwini is the Executive Vice President and Portfolio Manager at Omniscience Capital. Again, similarly, interestingly, Ashwini has a great start in insurance industry, and his career was into IFCO Tokyo actuarial team, and that is where I think the entire foundation of risk consciousness and the risk management was laid, and which eventually is helping all the investors at Omniscience Capital in not just blindly chasing alpha, but even more focus on risk management. And alpha, as I just told, was more of an outcome, which was much sustainable, which was much peaceful, I would say, kind of thing. And Ashwini has been accredited with a lot of breakthrough research in his earlier career. In fact, he and his team has been credited for this breakup of big pharma to unlock value, with Pfizer spinning out of animal health and baby formula verticals in the past. And he has also covered a lot of other companies like Merck, J&J, Abbott, and others. So with this quick introduction, and of course, Ashwini holds an MBA from IIM Lucknow and Toll House Business School, Finance and BTech from IIT Bombay. So with this quick introduction and not taking too much time between you and the investors, Dr. Vikas and Ashwini, welcome to this Sunday webinar at Small Case.
Thank you.
Perfect. So, the format which we will be keeping is maybe first 15-20 minutes, we will be having some questions which we have received from a lot of our investors, and we have just tried to curate them into some brackets so that we cover your entire journey, outlook, and of course your views on the market. And then we will be taking a lot of live questions as well in the next 30-35 minutes. So Dr. Vikas, starting with you, you as a team have been having an amazing run with defense, railways, and many of your small cases were multi-baggers. And I still remember that how your small cases has been so much ahead of the curve, so much that now we see a lot of mainstream products like mutual funds and all this launching focused thematic mutual funds around these themes, right? These themes were not even heard of when you had launched your small cases. So what were your thoughts then? And now that they have been like fairly discovered by the markets and everybody's talking about defense, railways, and of course, many of your small cases, uh, if you could help us understand in the first place how were this theme generated and how you had foreseen all these themes way back like 4.5 years back.
Right. So thanks, Rakesh, for the question. So basically, it exactly goes back to the statement you made that you have to chase safety to get alpha. That's the crux of our philosophy. And the way we do is we have something called the scientific investing framework, which we apply to the full market. So let's say all the companies above 1,000 crores. Okay. So because the smaller ones are less transparent and riskier. So that's about 1,000 to 1,500 companies are above 1,000 crores market cap or intrinsic value. From that, we apply this framework. So I'll not get into the framework, that'll take too much time. But basically, it focuses us on a narrow portion of the market where there is potential alpha. So we have reduced the risks, lot of risks have been taken out. Then we focus on the growth aspect, that what future growth tailwinds and demand is there for that kind of a sector. And from that, we choose a portfolio. So when we did this exercise in around 2019, late 2019, let's say 2020, early to FY20, we found lot of these stocks from railways and defense. And that time, nobody wanted these stocks. They had the kind of, let's say, negative view because of them being PSUs. Uh, and people said, oh, PSU is bad, everything else good. And we said, no, we don't care about who owns the company. We care about because the management is different. The kind of monopoly or access to market each company has is different. So let's look at the case by case. And what we found is very high growth, very capital efficient companies, despite them being PSUs, and huge growth opportunity. I mean, astoundingly large growth opportunities, and not in the air. It is very clearly defined in the government documentation of the National Rail Plan or the defense production and promotion plan, etc. So it was all well laid out, and then you verify it with the companies, and it was all there. And funnily, I mean, the companies which maybe had a 4,000 crore market cap and maybe 2,000 crores as cash on the books, net cash. Okay. So you're getting it practically free. And these are specialists, right? I mean, how many companies in the world can make an aircraft carrier? How many companies in the world can make intercontinental missiles or torpedoes, nuclear capable torpedoes, or nuclear submarines or stealth submarines, right? So these are the very specialized kind of companies which were unique in the world, not only in India, and they were available absolutely practically free. So we zeroed in on that, and we found these themes which were very, very attractive, very high probability of great returns. And the crux of how do we generate the returns, right? So there are two parts. One is the high growth, and many fundamental investors chase growth. So that's fine. But if you get it at the right pricing, and we got it, probably most of these were single digit Ps. Once we take out the cash and all, definitely they were low or mid single digit Ps. Now you think about it, if your growth is, let's say, 4x in last 4 years, and you have a re-rating from a single digit PE to something in 40s or 50s or even 30s, that's a huge, huge return. So this is what happened with the railways and defense. And defense, of course, I mean, what you mentioned, that the 1 year later, the defense index came up, then 2 more years later, 2.5 years later, somebody launched a fund. And then just few months back, many, many funds have come up. Probably too late to get the benefit from that theme. So that's where I see, I really love small case because it allows people to launch themes which are identified at the right time without the kind of a delay which happens with, the more accepted structures.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So, Ashwini, coming to you now,
Yeah.
we have
On that bit, Rakesh, I
yeah,
just want to add, because this is a time where we are celebrating 4 years and we are really happy with the experience that we had and the way we have come across to realize the power of the platform, small case specifically. It's been really a great time to come out with some really high alpha generating opportunities for the investors. But as we are discussing that, how did we spot and what is the process? I think that is very, very is a good differentiator for Omniscience. And 4 5 years back, this was precisely the time when we were identifying so many attractive opportunities, right? So everything was looking quite juicy, and there was a report, or there was a national infrastructure pipeline, the concept that around 2020 the government had rolled out, right? And they were talking about something like 105 lakh crore of investment over the next 5 years. And it was sounding as if crazy, right? That, how we don't have money, we don't have capital, we are running, deficits on budgets and so on. But if you just look at the last 10 years journey in terms of just the budget allocation, I'm just talking about the government spending, right, on the capital capex or infrastructure. From in let's say 10 years back, we were doing around 2 lakh crore. Last year in the budget, we did around 15 lakh crores on capital capex investments, right? So, and if you just add up last five, or maybe that every year, if just the government is doing this much, private sector which is coming along is adding more. Now that 100 lakh crore number or 200 lakh crore number doesn't look crazy at all, right? But then the idea was that they were targeting railways, they were targeting defense, they were targeting power, roads, and so many infrastructure pieces, and primarily setting up the logistic chain, part of the puzzle. And each of these had like a crazy multi-bagger opportunity, because most of these companies initially, they were public sector companies which were, no one used to like them. So they were at single digit Ps and so on, as Vikas said. So we could identify so many things, and way beyond everyone else, because there was so many, I would say, we call them anomalies. Like, at any point in time, these anomalies will exist. This time it was because of a PSU tag, or maybe people cannot, kind of focus too much into the future. 3 year is a too long a horizon for many investors, or many even asset allocators, because they want something to happen in the next 6 months, right? And that's where the focus goes. But continuously we have been able to find opportunities, which for a next 3 to 5 year horizon can generate a lot of alpha. And one is the growth part, but significantly the other component that comes is from the re-rating, as Vikas talked about, stock going from a single digit or a low double digit P to 30 or 40 P. That's a crazy amount of return.
right. No, perfect. I think, Ashwini, as you rightly said, and Vikas just mentioned that later on everybody joined the party and maybe they were too late to the party. So now that we have been championing defense, power, bullet train, and a lot of other infra-related themes, what would you suggest to the investors, to one who are already invested in those small cases, and of course they have been riding the journey, but of course of late बहुत सारा ऊपर से कूलिंग भी हुआ है. So one set of investors who are looking for suggestions or advice from you, that how should they approach their current investments, and for the new investors जो अभी सोच रहे हैं कि कुछ exposure लेना है, do you still feel that these themes will continue to show the kind of path or the journey what they have shown in the past, or it's time to start looking at different themes from Omniscience table?
Yeah, thanks. So, see, two things. One, there are a lot of investors who have taken and benefited from the defense and railway portfolio specifically. Of course, there is the small cap as well, which and the dividend portfolios, which have also done well. But let me address it to the defense and railways specifically. Because we mentioned that the valuations, like if I take the Nifty India Defense Index, that's showing something like 57 or 58 PE.
Mm.
Okay, and the same is the case for all the funds which are
Right.
launched around that. Some might be active, but still mota moti wo 57, 58 PE है. हमारा जो PE है on small case, उसको हमने we have brought it below 25. Okay, so it's around 23, 24 if I'm not wrong, recently, in that range. And the way we have done it is, see, you have to be flexible. You want exposure to the concept or theme of defense. But if you just go by the pure play arms and ammunition stocks, then they are all overvalued, right? Or maybe a handful are remaining, very, very few are remaining, which you can count on fingertips. Everything else is extremely overvalued. So you have to step back and say, now in this modern world, in 21st century, how is defense played? Okay, how the governments do defense, right? How geostrategy works. And it's less of wars, direct wars, right? And more of diplomacy, more of economic controls, more of merchandise controls, more of movement of people, more of controlling strategic resources or technologies, and so on, or even space defense or cyber defense and things like that.
Sure.
So we have taken a step back and started looking at the broader dimensions of defense. And we said, okay, in the broader dimension, what is the universe of defense related stocks? So even things like, I mean, and you have to now not only look at India, because India has not been doing the broader defense till, let's say, recently. Okay. Now we have matured where we are also doing that. Maybe we were doing, but not to the big extent. But somebody like a US has been doing it for long. So you have to learn from what US government is doing in terms of defense for very long time, right? And how they have taken up strategic resources on oil or rare earth metals and so on. And same we can verify whether the Indians are doing, and we are. Okay, so just as an example, now I cannot speak everything freely here, but you should understand that the government together with private entities tries to have influence, which prevents lot of wars.
Got
And
it.
and accordingly, we have created the universe, which is much broader universe, and found alpha generating. See, finally, investor cares about two things: that are you true to the label? So am I getting exposure to that theme? And number two, am I going to get alpha?
Right.
We are trying to ensure both of them. And that's why our PE is like 23, 24 now. So I would say that the huge opportunity in defense still remains. It's there for multiple decades for India because we are severely underinvested in defense. And people should take exposure. PE wise, we are, let's say, similar to or slightly lower than Nifty, right? But the growth opportunity wise, this portfolio has much higher growth opportunity compared to the overall Nifty. So we think there is huge potential alpha.
Got it.
There are new themes
Yeah.
as well to get that extraordinary kind of things which we spotted in defense and railways 5 years, 4 years back. Similar things are true for two themes we think today. One is banking, which is at single digit PE practically. Maybe it is 9, maybe it is 12. It depends when market is moving. So it's very, very low PE bucket. Growth opportunities at least 15 to 16%. Credit growth rate is given over next several years. We believe that we are at economic inflection point of an economic boom, in which case it can go to as high as 20% for a midterm, right? And when that happens, the earnings of the banks are even higher than the AUM growth.
Right.
Okay, the asset growth rate, it's higher than that, the earnings growth rate, because they have operating leverage. And so ROE shoots through the roof and so on. And then there is re-rating. So this is the case, we believe. No guarantees, of course, but this is 35% of Nifty is banking and financials. And it is basically going to drive the whole Indian economy. So that is the first. And second, who's going to power the Indian economy? So power sector, again, we think is priced around 12, 13, 14 PE maybe. Again, growth rates of 15 to 20%, depending on which companies we are discussing. So again, we think this whole thing is severely mispriced. So these two themes I am very excited about, frankly.
Got it. So Ashwini, maybe Vikas bhai ने अभी जो power के बारे में बात की, maybe I'll just double down on that power as a theme, that we hear a lot of things now around power, and within power we hear a lot of now euphoria around, if I may use that word, around renewables as a concept or a sub theme. So how are you looking at that theme? And because within power, I think that is the most highly priced theme, at least optically, if we see the current numbers. And of course, you have that kind of foresight vision as a team. What you see in that particular subsegment of power, if one has to play on power as a theme and within that renewables?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a traditional approach as well as a slightly different approach when it comes to power. Traditional approach, I totally agree that renewables is the future. So आज जहाँ 400 450 गीगावाट का जो हमारा इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी है, उसमें 500 गीगावाट का एडिशनल रिन्यूएबल कैपेसिटी ऐड करने का प्लान है, राइट? सो डबल होने वाला है, और ये नेक्स्ट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट 2030 मे बी 2032. तो डबल डिजिट ग्रोथ है, वो 12% है, 15% है ऑफ द इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी. So this is the plan where the capital allocation is going. Now there are all new age players like who are coming now, setting up, let's say, solar industry or focusing on wind industry and so on. But then there are traditional players who are the traditional power generators who have a lot of capacity in terms of balance sheet strength and let's say support from the whole ecosystem and expertise in delivering projects. So, जो traditional power generators हैं, they are also doing heavy duty capex. And if you look at each company's targets in terms of next 10 years, what they are trying to achieve, they are trying to become carbon neutral. They are trying to build the renewable capacity at a very, very aggressive pace. Now, the discipline of valuation comes at the play. अगर कोई चीज ऑलरेडी आइडेंटिफाइड है, उसके लिए आप पूरा वैल्यूएशन अगर आज ही दे रहे हो, तो इन स्पाइट ऑफ दैट थीम बीइंग वेरी हाई ग्रोथ थीम और लो ग्रोथ थीम, इन्वेस्टर को पैसा नहीं बनने वाला. इन्वेस्टर इज ऑलवेज रनिंग द हाई रिस्क ऑफ कि कुछ भी नेगेटिव न्यूज है स्टॉक में, तो वो 50 100 150 का पी से नीचे ही आने वाला है वो स्टॉक, राइट? तो यहाँ पे वो जो अल्फा फोकस है फॉर द क्लाइंट, उसको ध्यान में रखते हुए we play that theme of high heavy capex being done on this space and done by companies which are very very favorably priced. तो वो हम फोकस उस पे है. उसके अलावा जो चीजें हैं, so Indian Railways is already the largest consumer of power. Okay, so बट सबसे बड़ा क्लाइंट है, उसका अगर ग्रोथ अच्छा है तो पावर सेक्टर के लिए भी ग्रोथ अच्छा है, राइट? सो वी आर लुकिंग एट दैट एज अ सब ग्रोथ वेक्टर टू पावर. उसके अलावा देर आर टू मेन फ्यूचर लार्जेस्ट कंज्यूमर्स ऑफ पावर विच आर गोइंग टू बी, वन इज द डेटा सेंटर्स and the other is the EV ecosystem, the whole, right? So these are the two other ways to ride the power growth factor. Focus on companies which and it works vice versa. You can play data centers through power. If the valuation are favorable, you can play electric vehicle through power, which we do on our future of mobility product. And you see, because these are all high growth sub segments which have their own nitty gritties or detailing why there is a lot of high growth present in those sectors. तो इन दो की वजह से एंड आर एस्टिमेट्स लाइक कि नेक्स्ट 10 years में डेटा सेंटर्स will consume around 10-12% of the total power consumption, and similar will be the EV ecosystem in terms of the whole charging infrastructure and stuff. So because of this, the growth outlook is very, very good. The ecosystem to pick stocks from becomes very, very broad for us, so that हम को वो valuation constraint ना feel हो, and while we remain true to the theme as well. और उसके बाद एक अच्छा 13-14 PE का भी portfolio we are able to create,
Interesting.
So,
No, this is, I think this is very interesting perspective, Ashwini. What you just said, that how you play power theme via data centers, EV, and vice versa. This was, I think, a very, very new perspective, and not really restricting yourself only to those 10, 20 traditional companies where the whole world is flocking over and just improving their valuations to the roof and all that. So this was very helpful, Ashwini and Vikas. So now, taking a step back, now that we have spoken about those specific themes and all that, but at the end of the day, we are all part of this whole ecosystem, right? And where now every country is connected like very, very closely with each other. And something happens in the US, something the reaction starts in India as well. So maybe before that, before touching the macros, I would like your views or perspective that now that we have had a great run in the last 4 years, and there is always this philosophy or a lot of this veterans investors, they always say like mean revert होगा 4 साल एक साथ अगर market चल जाता तो there will be some time wise correction, value wise correction, depending on who is talking. What is your perspective now that we are sitting just one month ahead of the new year? People are really excited to hear what 2025 holds for them from investing point of view, and how they should look at their investments in the next coming year.
Yeah, so this question, for nearly last 15 years, I've been hearing every single year. So 2010 onwards, you can say, practically I've been hearing that market बहुत ऊपर हो गया, अब गिरना है. And this is globally, it's not India, right? I mean, especially the US, they keep saying कि भाई इस बार तो recession आएगा, इस बार तो bear market आएगा. And it's unfortunately for them, it's happened only once or twice. एक तो COVID था, वो तो छोटा सा dip था. And 2022 was bad for US purely because of the interest rate hike.
Sure.
Okay. और इंडिया ने वो भी नहीं देखा. इंडिया में आया अक्टूबर 22 तक नीचे, और फिर we ended the year with like 3% or 4% on Nifty, right? And so net it came out positive even within calendar year 22. तो ये चीज है. Definitely I agree with the veterans कि भाई if it keeps going up, कभी ना कभी मीन रिवर्ट होना है. लेकिन मीन रिवर्ट कहाँ पे होना है? ओके, तो अगर आप बहुत लो बेस से स्टार्ट हुए थे और आपकी ग्रोथ हाई है एंड मार्केट हैज बीन ग्रोइंग स्लोअर देन दैट, तो अभी मीन रिवर्ट होने का टाइम नहीं. दूसरा है कि मार्केट तो एक रेट से हो रहा है, लेकिन बहुत स्क्यूड तरीके से हुआ है. तो जो कंजम्पशन स्टॉक्स है, एफएमसीजी टाइप के जो पॉपुलर वंस है, जो कि लास्ट 10 इयर्स में बहुत पॉपुलर थे, दे वर ऑल एट 50, दे स्टार्टेड एट 25. लेट्स से 2013-14 में वो 25 के आसपास था उनका पीक. वो बढ़ते 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 अभी 70-80-100 तक चला गया. ओके, एंड तो उनका ग्रोथ रेट तो 8-10-12% रहा होगा, अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ रेट ऑन एन एवरेज. लेकिन मल्टीपल बढ़ने की वजह से उनमें से अमेजिंग रिटर्न आ रहा था. तो पूरा मार्केट, और एक और प्रॉब्लम हो गया कि देवर व्हाट इज कॉल्ड बफेट कंपनीज, राइट? मोनोपोली है और वो सब है, तो जो बफेट को अच्छा लगता है. लेकिन बफेट को एक और चीज अच्छी लगती है कि ग्रेट कंपनीज एट ग्रेट प्राइस. जैसे हम यहाँ बोलते हैं सुपर नॉर्मल कंपनीज एट सुपर नॉर्मल प्राइसेस. तो वो सुपर नॉर्मल प्राइस खत्म हो गया एक पॉइंट पे. लेट्स से 25 पी पे वैसी कंपनी है, मोट है, सब कुछ है, इट वाज अंडर वैल्यूड या फेयरली वैल्यूड. अब वो जब 100 के पी पे या 90 के पी पे पहुंच गई है, इट डजंट मेक सेंस. तो वो चीज के वजह से, लेकिन मार्केट लेफ्ट लुक्ड लाइक इट केप्ट गोइंग अप, बट एक स्क्यूड वे में जा रहा है. और दूसरी तरफ आप कोई बहुत अच्छी चीज है जो हाई ग्रोथ रेट पे है, लेकिन आप उसको इग्नोर कर रहे हो. जैसे हमने डिफेंस रेलवेज की बात की, या अभी हम बैंक्स की बात कर रहे हैं, या पावर की बात कर रहे हैं. तो देर आर सेगमेंट्स ऑफ मार्केट विच आर सीवियरली मिसप्राइस्ड ऑन द अदर साइड. तो एवरेज तो लग रहा है कि बहुत हाई जा रहा है, लेकिन अपॉर्चुनिटी ऐसे है. अपॉर्चुनिटी ईटीएफ में नहीं है वहां पे भी. आई एम नॉट डिस्प्यूटिंग, ईटीएफ में भी है इंडिया में. दैट इज द बेस्ट पार्ट के इतनी अच्छी ग्रोथ इकोनॉमी होने की वजह से आप तो ब्लाइंडली ईटीएफ खरीद लो निफ्टी का, तो भी आपका रीजनेबल कुछ रिटर्न आ जाएगा लॉन्ग टर्म में. लेकिन इफ यू आर रेडी टू गो डाउन एंड गो इनटू पॉकेट्स और आइडेंटिफाई पॉकेट्स, तो निफ्टी एक लेवल पे जाएगा, कुछ चीजें अंडर वैल्यूड, कुछ चीजें रिवर्ट टू मीन होंगी, जैसे हमने कहा कंजम्पशन स्टॉक्स, और कुछ चीजें जो अनआइडेंटिफाइड है वो फास्टर देन मीन ऊपर जाएंगी.
राइट.
This is the way we see the situation today.
Got it. Interesting. Or now let's fly to US for a moment now that Donald Trump has been like डेली बेसिस पे कुछ ना कुछ वॉइसेस आ रही है और हर वॉइस पे कहीं ना कोई सेक्टर इधर रिएक्ट कर जाता है, इंडियन इकोनॉमी रिएक्ट कर जाती है. ऑन द अदर साइड वी स्टिल हैव दैट वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग नैरेटिव दैट इंडिया इटसेल्फ इज सच अ बिग मार्केट, राइट. हिस्टोरिकली अगर आप देखेंगे इंडिया वाज डिस्कवर्ड एज अ मार्केट बिकॉज ऑफ दैट के सेल्फ कंजम्पशन ही इतना है कि बाहर का जो भी हो रहा है वो तो बोनस है. बट I don't know how things are looking right now, that how the policies which are framed in US will affect India positively or negatively, and for which pockets or which sectors. As you earlier mentioned कि wars अभी ऐसे लड़े जाएंगे, right? Policies के through लड़े जाएंगे war.
Absolutely.
Now क्या पता हमारे साथ war हो भी रहा हो और हमें पता ही नहीं हो as an investor. So if you can throw some light on that part of the reality or the nuances how the world thinks about India at large.
So, see, Trump obviously will look after, or the US government will look after their own interests.
Right.
We will look after our own interests. But keep in mind that towards the end of 2020, जब Trump का last year चल रहा था, we were very close to creating a US-India trade deal. Okay. But Trump clearly said the Indians are very hard negotiators. वो अपना interest देखते हैं, तो वो deal हो नहीं पाई. Now that deal will be started. Once he takes over, of course, 2-4 महीना तो they will have to settle so many other things, right? Internal things. Once they start interacting with the rest of the world, हमारी US-India trade deal भी start हो जाएगी, but not from zero, right? It's start from the previous level where it had reached. So my guess is that within first 6 months, we should see a India-US trade deal announced. Now, what will that have? Naturally, we have tariffs on US goods. तो उसके काउंटर में वो थ्रेटन करेंगे कि भाई हम भी लगाएंगे या आप हटा लो. तो हम बोलेंगे हम हटा लेंगे. But then what are the favorable sectors for us? Where and they are favorable for them as well. जैसे IT है, IT इंडिया बहुत सारा यूएस को एक्सपोर्ट करती है, पर यूएस को भी वो कंपलसरी है that they have it. If they take out Indians from the whole thing, their whole IT development will collapse.
Sure.
Okay. So they are able to, with help of Indian companies, generate lot of international revenues, non-US revenues for their IT companies. तो इसमें बस ट्रेड डील ये होगा कि भाई वीजा मूवमेंट और वो सब कैसे इजी करेंगे एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. दैट विल बी फेवरेबल टू इंडिया. दे नीड इट. सेकेंड इज फार्मा. फार्मा में भी दे नीड इट. लाइक ट्रम्प का कमिटमेंट है कि आई विल रिड्यूस द हेल्थ केयर कॉस्ट इन यूएस, विच इज एक्सट्रीमली हाई, मतलब क्रेजीली हाई कंपेयर टू इवन यूरोप. इंडिया से तो कंपेयर करके फायदा ही नहीं है. So one of the ways he can do it is with help of Indian pharma companies, which are able to deliver really, really inexpensive drugs, right? Because of our manufacturing expertise. और हम API भी कर लेंगे तो और strong हो जाएगा हमारा offering. तो ये दो चीज में हमारे favorable कुछ आएगा. Of course, they will ask us to open up. जो भी होगा वो देखेंगे. Certain places में we will open up. Like for example, Starlink is already even before the administration it's being considered. So we will be allowing lot of good things to come in. They will also be helpful to India. तो कई बार win win हो सकता है. War होने के बाद भी, like you said, diplomatic war, but it could be a win win for both.
Right.
So how we see broadly that it could end up with win win, because हमारी गवर्नमेंट नहीं मानेगी और अगर हमारे लिए लॉस है, और उनकी गवर्नमेंट नहीं मानेगी अगर उनके लिए लॉस है. Today that is the situation. So broadly, we are very positive on this.
Perfect. So maybe one last question, and this question is echoing a lot of questions which we have already received on the form and on the live as well. So now that we are having these conversations, and a lot of people, a lot of your existing investors, they have invested in a couple of your small cases. So they are seeking some advice that how they should approach their investing now in terms of your small cases. Of course, you have answered some of those questions earlier, but maybe very specific to your small cases, like that now, because the good thing which has happened in the last 4 years is that a lot of investors who have got introduced to the markets, they are well read it. right? They have read a lot of books on value investing, growth investing. They have watched a lot of podcasts. So at least they are informed. But the sad part is that they are not experienced, right? And I'm sure everybody, including all of us, we have gone through our own journeys in these markets for the last 20, 25 years for whatever we have been operating. Now, for them, it's the testing moment to apply those readings or their knowledge, what they have got over a period of last 4 years. And that is where the dilemma is, that every time the market falls, the first thing what they do is buy on dips, right? The entire mutual fund industry has shown that thing, that how SIPs have grown in spite of markets falling. So the question which is here now is that market is down from its peak, whatever we have seen. Is it a good time to invest, or should we wait, or how we should get into markets with our additional funds and existing investments का क्या करें?
So of course, I mean, पहले वो disclaimer दे देता हूँ कि whatever we say cannot be applicable to every single person, right?
Right.
Like हम broad based logic दे रहे हैं, उस logic को हर एक person को अपने अपने हिसाब से adapt करना है.
Sure.
तो ब्रॉड बेस्ड लॉजिक ये है, एक पहली बात कि इफ यू हैव सरप्लस फंड्स, इफ यू आर अ यंग पर्सन, लो डिपेंडेंसीज, लो लाइबिलिटीज, आपको अपने लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए वेल्थ क्रिएट करनी है. सो लेट्स से 20s 30s इवन 40s में हो, आपको तो 60 प्लस तक काम करना है, तो यू हैव नियरली 20 to 30 years प्लस ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट होराइजन. तो नेचुरली व्हेन यू आर इन्वेस्टिंग इन अ कंट्री लाइक इंडिया, तो उसमें बाय ऑन डिप्स डज मेक सेंस. ओके, क्योंकि लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ है. ये कभी नहीं होता है व्हेन इट्स नॉट टू बी अप्लाइड इज व्हेन द मार्केट इज एक्सट्रीमली ओवरवैल्यूड. ऐसा
Right.
बीच में होता है. जनवरी 2008 वाज सच अ पीरियड. अब हाइंडसाइट में इजी होता है, बट देयर वाज आल्सो एन इंडिकेटर 30 का पी नियरली पहुंच चुका था. ओके, वी आर नोवेयर क्लोज टू 30 पी. और उस समय पास्ट का आप देखोगे 30 पी वगैरह, तो उस समय इन्फ्लेशन यूज टू बी 7%, गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स यूज टू बी 8.5%, तो 7% और 8.5%, राइट? और तब मार्केट वॉज एक्सपेक्टेड टू डिलीवर 15% काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स. तो उस समय 30 का पी बहुत हाई हो गया. अब लो इन्फ्लेशन एनवायरनमेंट है, आरबीआई का टारगेट 4% का है, गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स का इन्फ्लेशन प्लस 1.5% का वो होता है, तो 5.5-6% का गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड का है गोइंग फॉरवर्ड. तो उस पीरियड में हायर मल्टीपल इज जस्टिफाइड. तो जो 20 का एवरेज पी ठीक माना जाता था निफ्टी के लिए, आई वुड से इट्स क्लोजर टू 25 टुडे विद अ फ्यूचर. ऑफ कोर्स द एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न ऑफ निफ्टी 15 होता था, वो 12 या 10 भी हो सकता है गोइंग फॉरवर्ड, राइट? तो एक तो वो ध्यान में रखना है. तो हमें बस वो 23 चला गया, ओवर वैल्यूड हो गया, ये करेक्ट लॉजिक नहीं है. नंबर वन, वो आपको स्टडी करना पड़ेगा,
Right.
और डिटेल में कैलकुलेशन. नंबर वन. नंबर टू, जब आपके पास लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्ट ही करना है, आपको विड्रॉ नहीं करना है, यू डोंट नीड मनी, तो जब मार्केट नीचे जाता है, एवरीथिंग इज ऑन सेल, सो यू हैव टू ट्रेन योर माइंड दैट जब नीचे थिंग्स आर ऑन सेल, जैसे आप दुकान में जाके या उस पर खरीदते हो चीजें, जब सस्ती होती है तब ज्यादा खरीदते हो,
Right.
और जब महंगी होती है तब खरीदते हो. सेम वे हमें वो ट्रेन करना है. समहाउ लोगों के दिमाग में जब मार्केट ऊपर रहता है तब फोमो करते हैं, और जब नीचे रहता है तब दे ट्राई टू सेल आउट एंड से कि अब और नीचे जाएगा फिर हम आएंगे. तो वी वुड से दैट यू स्टार्ट बाइंग एज थिंग्स स्टार्ट गोइंग डाउन. किसी को नहीं पता कि बॉटम कहाँ है,
Right.
ना किसी को पता है पीक कहाँ पे है. ठीक है, किसी को नहीं पता है, वॉरेन बफेट को नहीं पता है, इज क्लियरली मेंशन मल्टीपल टाइम्स. ओके, तो ग्रेटेस्ट इन्वेस्टर ऑफ ऑल टाइम है, वो कह रहा है नहीं किया जा सकता ये. बर्कशायर खुद 50% से ज्यादा डिप कर चुका है लाइफ में एटलीस्ट 3 बार. यू कैन गो एंड सी द चार्ट. तो उसे पता होता तो वो गिरने ही नहीं देता, है ना, पहले ही सेल कर देता है एंड ऑल दैट. तो वो नहीं होता है. गिरता है जब आपके लिए रीजनेबल है, आप इन्वेस्ट कीजिए, और जब आपका पोर्टफोलियो ओवर वैल्यूड हो गया है तब आप निकल जाइए उस पोर्टफोलियो में से, लुक फॉर समथिंग एल्स. अब जैसे हमारे में, हम एक जनरल में कॉन्सेप्ट देता हूं कि अगर 100 रुपीज हमारा इक्विटी में है, तो आप 40 से 60 रुपया कोर में लगाइए. कोर यानी लार्ज कैप, मिड कैप, स्मॉल कैप, मल्टी कैप, फ्लेक्सी कैप, इस तरह के चीजों में आपको 50% अप्रोक्सीमेटली लगाना है, 40 to 60. रिमेनिंग जो 50% बचा, उसको आप 5 थीम्स पकड़ सकते हो 10-10% की, क्योंकि कोई भी वो थीम है वो हाई रिस्क है, एक ही सेक्टर है, एक ही सेगमेंट है. तो आप उसमें 10% से ज्यादा मत लगाइए, चाहे ओमनी साइंस का हो चाहे किसी का भी हो। माई एडवाइस विल बी भाई 10% कैप है, और किसी को और डाइवर्सिफाई करना है तो 5-5% की भी थीम्स ले सकता है, बिकॉज देन आपको इतने सारे थीम्स का एक्सपोजर मिलता है। एक डाइवर्सिफिकेशन हो गया, विच मीन्स रिस्क कम हो गया, प्लस ऑल आर हाई ग्रोथ अपॉर्चुनिटीज पोटेंशियल। तो जो जो वर्कआउट होएगी, आप एक वेंचर कैपिटलिस्ट के जैसे हो गए। सपोज आपके पास 10 थीम्स है अलग अलग, तो आपने 10 थीम्स में डिवाइड कर लिया, और प्रोबेबिलिटी कोई ना कोई बहुत ज्यादा मल्टीप्लाई करेगा, ये वेरी हाई हो जाता है। तो आपका
Right.
वेंचर कैपिटलिस्ट के जैसा पोर्टफोलियो, पर आपका एकदम कंजर्वेटिव भी है भाई, 50% तो हमने कोर में रखा है। तो एक बहुत ही अच्छा पोर्टफोलियो बन सकता है इस तरीके से।
Got it. Got it. Great, Vikas and Ashwini. I think now we are happy to take questions. So most of the questions are around your small cases because काफी investors join किए हैं जो आपके small case subscribers भी है. So I'll just take some of the questions and maybe you can add more context because काफी चीजों को already आपने touch कर दिया है. Just allow me a moment. Yeah. So we have Rakesh Shah, who is asking, I know you already have so many small cases. I don't know what's the context, but Rakesh Shah is asking, are you launching any new small case in future? I believe you already have a lot of small cases. So if you can, maybe this question might help us to give some color or flavor, Ashwini, on your small cases, like which are the top 3, 4, 5 flagship small cases which you feel are the ones which investors can start exploring from here on. I can see we have Bharat Defense, Bullet Train, Super Trends. I think a lot of questions have come around Super Trends also. So if you can just deep dive into
Sure.
maybe 2 minutes, one minute on each of
Yeah.
the flagship
So
small cases.
great. Yeah. So see, the idea remains the same, which where Vikas left, कि भाई एक हमें एक diversified approach से चलना है. Somehow I've seen कि भाई वो नया कुछ लाना या फिर क्या फिर आपका रीबैलेंस कब होने वाला है या फिर आप कुछ चेंजेस करने वाले हो तब मैं अपना कैपिटल एलोकेशन करूंगा. तो तब तक मैं वेट कर रहा हूँ, ऐसा थोड़ा टेंडेंसी कुछ परसेंटेज ऑफ इन्वेस्टर्स में देखा है मैंने. बट हैविंग सेड दैट, वो थोड़ा सा हमारा लॉन्ग टर्म ओरिएंटेशन है. सी द डिफरेंस इज दैट कि there are multiple small cases that we have launched. There is a mix of thematic as well as core portfolios we have launched. And what we are saying that you have to allocate with lot of confidence and for a long term horizon. तो जैसे आप 30 years की एज में हैं, 40 years की एज में हैं, या इवन यू आर इन्वेस्टिंग फॉर नेक्स्ट 10, 20, 30 years, राइट. तो उसमें एक सिस्टमैटिक अप्रोच बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. और उसके चलते जो सुपरट्रॉन की आपने बात की, दिस इज स्मॉल कैप focus portfolio, right? Similarly, we have like the Royals and Knights, which is large cap and mid cap, right? अब वो आपको अपने एलोकेशन के हिसाब से डिफाइन करना है कि आपको उसमें कितना पैसा डालना है. लेकिन द आइडिया इज कि जहां मार्केट अभी 24-25 के पी पर है, अगर हम लार्ज कैप या मिड कैप की बात करें, और मे बी 30+ है जहां स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स की बात करें, वहां पे हमने ये लार्ज मिड एंड स्मॉल कैप पोर्टफोलियोज को इस तरह से क्यूरेट किया है दैट दे रिमेन ट्रू टू द एक्सपोजर. जैसे लार्ज कैप है तो लार्ज कैप है, और उसमें भी इट्स नॉट लाइक अ 5 stock 6-7 stock portfolio. It's a well diversified, maybe around 15-20 stocks portfolio, picking from the top 100, next 150, or the next, let's say, 500 stock universe. और इनका वैल्यूएशन, जो एक बात आपने बोली कि भाई आजकल द गुड पार्ट ऑफ लॉट ऑफ स्मॉल केस इन्वेस्टर्स इज दैट दे आर क्वाइट वेल रेड एंड इन्फॉर्म्ड. तो जो एक फीचर है हमारा, जहाँ पे हम जाके किसी उसका रैशनल पढ़ सकते हैं, फैक्ट शीट देख सकते हैं, फैक्ट शीट्स में अब डेली अपडेट होते हैं फंडामेंटल रेशियोज, और उसमें आप देखिए कि भाई इसका पी कितना है, मार्केट का पी कितना है. सो अगर और थोड़ा हम स्क्रॉल डाउन करें, सो वी कैन सी दैट ओके, इक्विटी स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स जो है वो 37 के पी पे, लेकिन उसके नियरली हाफ वैल्यूएशन पे मुझे एक स्मॉल कैप एलोकेशन मिल सकती है. और उसके अंदर एक डाइवर्सिफिकेशन भी है, आई थिंक, और नंबर ऑफ स्टॉक्स भी अगर आप देखेंगे तो इट शुड बी अराउंड 12-15 स्टॉक्स नियरली इसमें है एलोकेशन, or maybe around 20 stocks are there. So the point is that you can allocate to the small cap segment of the market, but with a much more confidence. And these tools are available to all the investors, right? On a which are updated daily basis, which is also rare, right? नहीं तो month में एक बार update होके मिलती है fact sheet typically किसी fund की, right? So this is something that people can make a lot of use of. इसके अलावा जो थीमेटिक में अगर बात करें तो पावर इज एज वी डिस्कस अर्लियर, पावर इज क्वाइट अट्रैक्टिव. तो पहले तो मैं हमारे जो मोर पॉपुलर वंस हैं डिफेंस और बुलेट ट्रेन की बात करता हूँ. डिफेंस एंड बुलेट ट्रेन स्टिल रिमेन्स क्वाइट अट्रैक्टिव बिकॉज ऑफ द ओवरऑल ग्रोथ दैट these segments enjoy. बुलेट ट्रेन में अगर बात करें स्पेसिफिकली, बिकॉज डिफेंस पे थोड़ा डिस्कशन हो गया था ऑलरेडी, बट बुलेट ट्रेन विच इज रेलवे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. अब इफ यू अप्रोच रेलवे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर और बुलेट ट्रेन फ्रॉम द लॉजिस्टिक्स व्यू पॉइंट, राइट, तो हमारा एक लॉजिस्टिक्स मिशन है जिसमें क्लियरली ले डाउन किया है कि भाई लॉजिस्टिक्स कॉस्ट को 13-14% पे जो अभी है ऑफ द जीडीपी, उसको अराउंड 8% ऑफ द जीडीपी पे लेकर आना है. उसके लिए मोस्ट ऑफ द एम्फेसिस हैज टू बी दैट जो अभी रोड पे जो जा रहा है आपका लॉजिस्टिक्स, प्राइमरी 60% जो मॉडल शेयर जो रोड्स के ऊपर है वो रेलवेज पे आना चाहिए. एंड देन द टाइमलाइन इज दैट बाय 2030 और 2032 आपका 45% ऑफ द मॉडल शेयर फ्रॉम द एग्जिस्ट, अभी 28-29% है, उससे 45% पे लेके जाएंगे और मे बी बाय इन नेक्स्ट 25 ईयर्स इट विल गो अप टू 60%, राइट. तो उस वजह से अभी डेडिकेटेड फ्रेट कॉरिडोर है जो ईस्टर्न वेस्टर्न, प्लस देयर आर मेनी अदर, राइट, विच आर इन द वर्क्स. तो वो जैसे ही कंप्लीटली ऑपरेशनल होते हैं एंड द होल लॉजिस्टिक्स इकोसिस्टम अराउंड दैट, which includes now the logistic companies, the third party transportation companies, the whole ecosystem of terminals, sheds, and related infrastructure becomes extremely important. और वहां पे काफी, because आज की डेट में इंडिया में logistic space is completely like more than 90% is unorganized, which will become because with the use of technology, and we are trying to create a single marketplace for logistics, right, with government initiatives. तो जैसे हमने जीएसटी, ओएनडीसी और इस तरह के यूपीआई वगैरह की टेक्नोलॉजी प्रूव की है, सेम थिंग इज गोइंग टू कम ऑन द लॉजिस्टिक्स, जहाँ पे मल्टी मॉडल इंटरफेस के थ्रू ऑल दीज थिंग्स विल इंटरैक्ट इन अ वन सिंगल प्लेटफॉर्म. तो उसमें ऑर्गेनाइज प्लेयर को बहुत एडवांटेज मिलने वाला है. So the railway bullet train is also expanding beyond just the pure play EPC companies which are building the railway infrastructure, but also now the second leg, that once you have a certain level of infrastructure, now you have to start using it, and how that is going to create opportunity is something which is remains. So दोनों थीम में ग्रोथ आउटलुक बहुत अच्छा है. वैल्यूएशंस वी हैव ऑलरेडी टॉक्ड अबाउट कि हम वो उसको 24-25 के पी के अंडर लेकर आ गए, तो वैल्यूएशन डिसिप्लिन इज ऑल्सो इंटैक्ट एंड वन कैन कंटिन्यू टू इन्वेस्ट. अगर आपने इन्वेस्टेड किया हुआ है तो आप यू कैन रिमेन इन्वेस्टेड, you can continue to allocate more, but keeping in mind the 5%, 10% cap that you have to implement, right? इसके अलावा जो other focus है includes future of mobility, includes power, includes banking और capital enablers, जो कि बहुत ही चीप है. मतलब अभी जो हम 10 से मल्टी री रेटिंग की बात कर रहे थे, कैपिटल एनेबलर अभी आई थिंक 10 या 11 के पीप है, राइट. एंड इट हैज सम ब्यूटीफुल बैंक्स, हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनीज एंड सम अदर फाइनेंशियल सर्विसेज फर्म्स जो जिनका ग्रोथ प्लस बैलेंस शीट स्ट्रेंथ दोनों ही एट डिकेडल हाइज है. तो वो एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है, बहुत ही सस्ते मिल रही है, लेकिन आउटलुक 3 years प्लस चाहिए, राइट. सो यू आर एलोकेटिंग टू दीज, you allocate your capital for 3-year horizon, there is very high likelihood that we can see some kind of a alpha generation that happens, right. तो ये दो एलिमेंट है, एंड ऑब्वियसली वी हैव मल्टीपल स्मॉल केसेस, बट वी विल कम आउट एज एंड व्हेन वी स्पॉट न्यू अपॉर्चुनिटीज, मिसप्राइज अपॉर्चुनिटीज इवॉल्विंग, बिकॉज दैट इज एट अ वेरी हार्ट ऑफ Omniscience Capital, to spot opportunities as they evolve and communicate. So
No, so just a disclaimer, like there are a lot of questions, but most of the questions are all revolving around the conversation what we have been done. So I'm just trying to bucketizing the question rather than taking individual, so that it doesn't get repetitive. So just to again summarize to a lot of questions what have come up, like फ्यूचर कौन सा सेक्टर अच्छा लगता है, करंट वालों का क्या करना है. सो just summarizing for the benefit of all the investors, and maybe Ashwini, Vikas, you can add wherever you feel like. So defense and bullet train continue to do well, and they will keep on doing well because of the kind of valuations at which they are currently having the stocks compared to the larger indices or the stocks which has already run up in those sectors. And when we say defense or bullet train, it's not only about the core sectors. There are a lot of other sub themes which Omniscience is open to play. And for the future set of small cases from here on, I think their best top two picks would be more on banking and financials. That is where they have a small case called Omniscience Capital Enablers. And of course, the power which Vikas mentioned in detail as well. So these are the four. And of course, as Vikas rightly mentioned, that how one should allocate capital, where say 50-60% can be on your core, where you can invest in the diversified small cases like super trusts, large cap, flexi cap, and all that. And of course, 5-10% can be allocated to each themes to get that high growth opportunities. So this is the crux of the conversation we had so far, and a lot of questions were around this, of course. Now, maybe I can just take one more question, which is more about the structure in which one should invest, whether it should be lump sum, whether this should be SIPs, whether one can do some partial exits from some small cases and move things to other. So these are more like tactical, operational question. Ashwini, Vikas, any one of you can add what approach has worked for you best, that whether one should allocate new capital to new small cases or one can do some partial exits or SIPs, whatever works.
So clearly, if I have 100 rupees of lump sum available today, I would definitely put 100 rupees of lump sum, assuming that I have a monthly income which allows me to do a systematic investment every month.
Sure.
So purely from a financial planning or asset allocation viewpoint, this is how I would do. Somebody is really jittery, then their lump sum they can divide over maybe anywhere between 3 months to 6 months, right? So at any point you can do that. It doesn't apply only to today. I think at any point of time, of course, you should just be aware that is the market at extreme bubble. Now, how to judge that? It's all very difficult, I understand. So if you're feeling completely lost, you don't know anything, you don't trust anyone, then maybe your lump sum you can divide over 12 months. Okay. So that's the most conservative way of doing that, you divide over 12 months. And then I'm assuming that you have a monthly income coming in, out of which 10, 20, 30%, whatever, how aggressive you are, how much you can spare, you add to the markets every month. So this is first thing. Second, as we mentioned, if you are breaching 10% in any thematic, whether omniscience, non-omniscience, anything, any fund, you should take it out and reallocate it to something new. If you can't figure out anything new, allocate it to core. Core being a flexi cap, multi cap, or large, mid, and small cap.
Sure.
And when we say large, mid, small cap, do 40-50% of the core in large caps, and remaining you can divide in mid and small caps.
Right.
This is broadly how I would allocate capital.
Okay. Perfect. So maybe I'll just take one or two last questions, and this is a new question which has come up, like which has not been discussed till now in our conversation, and pretty interesting name. So there is a subscriber of yours in Bharat Amritkal small case, and he have subscribed since last 2 months with an initial investment of something, and now he or she, I have not got his name, has another like more investable capital. So again, I'm sure you have answered this, but anything specific to Bharat Amritkal for somebody to know what exactly has gone into that theme? Is it a combination of all your themes, or is it something very specific to certain segment of the market?
Maybe I'll explain this.
Sure.
So this is a very fantastic offering, which is giving you the true exposure to the growing Indian economy, right? So Amritkal, by the definition, we are talking about 2047. And typically now we are talking about the next 20-25 years, right?
Right.
And the effort, which, the policy direction, I would say, is to, take the whole economy to the next level, where we are looking at a developed economy, or comparable to the West, where per capita incomes are higher, GDP levels are much higher comparable to the developed countries, and so on. And usme what are the building blocks that are required, right? So we have already worked at some of those building blocks, or have been working aggressively on those building blocks from a policy decision standpoint over the last 10 years or so. But just to, kind of quickly touch upon few things. One important aspect was that India was quite fragmented to begin with, right? Now we
Right.
have come up with a national market with GST, UPI, ONDC, and all those digital infrastructure in place. Now we are again connecting the whole market in the physical infrastructure space,
Right.
with the whole logistics mission and uh, infrastructure development that has happened on the roads and bullet trains, and dedicated freight corridors, and so on, and the ports infrastructure, airports, and everything, right? So a lot of capital expenditure has happened there. We have already seen, some a good, strong, robust infrastructure coming up. Now the other parts of the puzzle are, increasing the production capacity, increasing the production power. Now that may be linked to certain kind of PLIs that are being offered, focusing on some of the sunrise sectors where, there's a natural demand, and focusing on certain industries where India has an edge, right? Now you want to tap at the export markets, or you are focusing on the domestic consumption. Both elements are important. And at the same time, you are also trying to increase the buying power, so that it becomes a positive, virtuous circle, where there is more production, more buying power, so more employment, more consumption, and again, more demand. And we believe that we have set in that circle of positive upward circle, right? Now, these particular small case focuses on all the industries and all the sectors that are part of this various pillars of. And fourth one is the financing of all these initiatives, right? So financial services companies become banks, everyone becomes extremely important. So this is a very holistic portfolio. It's designed absolutely for long-term investors, right? So people who think that, okay, मेरा core allocation, but मेरे को एक ही product करना है, और मेरा outlook 10, 20, 30 years का है, then this is something they can keep adding to, right? And it will remain
So
always
question to you,
a
Ashwini.
yeah,
So
sorry.
2047 में ही रिटर्न आएगा, बीच में कुछ नहीं आएगा?
नहीं, वो तो पास्ट ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड से भी दिख रहा है विकास, बट थिंग्स माइट सी दैट्स अ इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट एक्चुअली विकास, क्योंकि अभी तक हम 4 ईयर सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं, और अभी तक वी हैव ऑलवेज बीन इन अ बुल मार्केट सो फार, राइट? और इक्विटीज इज नॉट लाइक अ इजी थिंग कि इसमें तो चार्ट ऊपर ही जाता है, और इसलिए इट्स अ नो ब्रेनर। और अभी गिरा है तो यार कुछ तो डू समथिंग, सम मैजिक, सो दैट यू सपोर्ट योर स्मॉल केसेस, हाउ कैन इट फॉल? That's the cost that we have to pay. That's a psychological cost that we have to pay to remain invested, and that's how we will have generate like super, otherwise it's very easy, right? If we can generate returns, आप हमारे small case के returns अगर देखिए last any of these, right, you will just say it's so simple, you just borrow. And sometimes we get these questions कि आपका इतना अच्छा return है, तो at least 50% के अगर तो आप दे ही दोगे ना next 3 years में, मैं आई एम नॉट आस्किंग अबाउट 100 you delivered, but थोड़ा तो डिस्काउंट लगा के, so it doesn't happen that way, because
Right.
otherwise you simply go out, borrow a lot of capital, invest, and then it's so simple, right? ऐसा नहीं है. तो obviously as we approach that 2047, there are going to be ups and downs, and there will be uh, uh, at points where you are seemingly losing capital also, right? And you will say, okay, come, do something, do some rebalance, do some churn in the portfolio. But see, that is where, as a long-term investor, we have to understand that we bought something which was already at a discount to intrinsic value. Now, if the market has fallen, it has become even more cheaper. So
Right.
is that the time that I want to sell it and then, go out of the market? Or is the time I probably, if I have more capital, regular income flowing in, to buy more and, orient myself for the next 3 year or 5 year horizon? तो
Sure.
ये लॉन्ग टर्म के इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए है, एंड नॉट ओनली अमृतकाल बट मोस्ट ऑफ आवर स्मॉल केसेस आर लाइक दैट, which are designed for alpha creation over for patient investors.
Sure. So, Vikas, Amritkal can be safely considered as a core portfolio in the scheme of things of Omniscience small cases?
Absolutely. It's an
Okay.
absolutely core investment, but which is a bouquet of multiple growth vectors.
Of course, of course. Perfect.
और मैं यही पूछा था, some people have that impression कि भाई पूरा वो 50-25 साल बाद ही रिटर्न आएगा, ऐसा नहीं है. Every 5 years on a rolling basis, we are continuously monitoring the portfolio. So we expect that on a long run, like a 3-5 year basis, you should have decent returns. Of course, अब उस समय मार्केट गिरा हुआ है तो मैं नहीं बोल सकता हूँ, right? But under normal market conditions, we think it should do really well.
I think this is a good point you just picked up, and maybe I was just about to have closing remarks, but I thought I'll touch upon this because a lot of questions ये जो आते रहते हैं, right? Partial exit लेना. That is where I always wonder that why investors are so concerned about that when your small case manager is on the job to monitor the portfolio, to do timely rebalances and all that. So let that effort be of the manager and not of the investor, because even rebalancing is part of the advice, right? Investors usually feel stock le liya ho gaya advice.
Exactly.
It's not only about lena, it's even about bechna, right? So because if you can touch, or Ashwini can touch upon ke rebalance ke time mein what exactly goes into your mind, and usually what is the frequency of rebalance? I know one of the major cornerstone of rebalances will be valuation, but is there some set frequency of rebalance, or it's like more like जब जरूरत है तभी हम rebalance करेंगे?
तो सी जब जरूरत है तब तो करना ही है, दैट्स अ गिवन.
Right.
बट हर 3 महीने में क्वार्टरली अर्निंग्स आती है फुल मार्केट की.
Perfect.
जब फुल मार्केट की आती है, वी गो थ्रू द फुल मार्केट एंड
Right.
लुक फॉर अपॉर्चुनिटीज व्हिच माइट बी देयर, जिसको हम बोलते हैं जीरो बेस्ड इन्वेस्टिगेशन. हम जीरो बेस्ड ढूंढ रहे हैं कि व्हाट वुड बी द बेस्ट पोर्टफोलियो टुडे फ्रॉम द मार्केट.
Right.
यूजुअली वी विल फाइंड दैट 80% इज व्हाट वी ऑलरेडी हैव, लेकिन 10-20% हो सकता है हमें नए स्टॉक मिल जाए. दैट इज वन. सेकेंडली, हमारा स्टॉक बहुत ओवर वैल्यूड हो गया जो ऑलरेडी पोर्टफोलियो में है, तो बाहर हो जाएगा. या फिर कभी कभी फंडामेंटल उसके खराब हो गए, या तो गवर्नमेंट ने कोई रेगुलेशन निकाल दिया, या कुछ फॉरेन कंट्री ने निकाल दिया, या कुछ बड़ा कॉम्पिटिटर आ गया, ऐसा हो सकता है. इन विच केस द फंडामेंटल्स आर नाउ नो लॉन्गर एज गुड एज दे वर, तो भी हम उसको निकाल सकते हैं. तो इस तरीके से हर 3 महीने में रिव्यू इज अ गिवन. मेनी टाइम्स यू माइट स्किप, वी माइट नॉट रीबैलेंस. दैट डजंट मीन कि किसी ने आपको देखा नहीं और क्या हो रहा है, हमने मॉनिटर किया है, हमारे हिसाब से जरूरत नहीं है, इसलिए हमने उसको स्किप किया. और सेकेंडली, जैसे एक और चीज मैं बताता हूँ, देयर लॉट ऑफ मोमेंटम मैनेजर्स ऑल्सो. तो मोमेंटम मैनेजर में जब गिरता है तो रीबैलेंस से उसको सॉल्व किया जा सकता है. लेकिन वी आर मोर ऑफ साइंटिफिक इन्वेस्टर्स और वैल्यू इन्वेस्टर बकेट में आप हमें डाल सकते हो. तो हमें जब गिरता है तो हम रीबैलेंस करके कोई वो उसको वापस से ऊपर नहीं चढ़ा देंगे, राइट? जब गिरा है, लाइक अश्विनी ने बोला, 100 की चीज हमने वैसे ही 50 में लिया, 50 की 30 हो गई है, तो client has to invest more if they can. Otherwise, they have to just wait it out. We are continuously looking at it. Rebalance से कुछ magic नहीं होने वाला है.
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल. No, this was super helpful, Vikas, and I think we are almost on time to wrap this whole conversation, which was pretty interesting. I think एक बहुत बड़ा ओवरव्यू मिला जो ऑप्टिकली लोगों को लगता रहे इतने स्मॉल केसेस है ये वो, बट आई थिंक दिस कॉन्वर्सेशन रियली हेल्प्ड अस टू नैरो डाउन ऑन सर्टेन चॉइसेस where we had around, I think, four, if I want to summarize, four flagship small cases, which we may call it, defense, rail, power, and banking. And the core portfolio could be Bharat Amritkal. And of course, on the nuances which you just explained on the rebalances, the way you evaluate companies and all that. So I think this was a super insightful conversation, even personally for me, because even I was not exposed to so many things which happens behind the scenes at Omniscience Capital, right? People usually see bus 3-year CAGR, 5-year CAGR. And I think one thing which stayed with me in this conversation was that how you manage risk. I think this is the most least talked about topic, especially in these times where everybody is just talking about returns, and very few realize that return is more of an outcome of a well managed risk product, right? Casualties नहीं है तो आप जिंदा हो, और जिंदा हो तो रेस भी जीत लोगे. People don't realize that very often, and I think this was purely that conversation for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of investors will relate to that. So with that, if you have some closing remarks, would be great, and then we can call it a day.
Yeah, I just want to say, great to have Smallcase as a platform, first of all, which allows us to put very fresh ideas very quickly and provide them to the investors. Secondly, very happy. So celebrating we being on 4 years, it's all fine. But what I really like to celebrate is the 4 years of wealth creation for the clients.
Yes.
So nearly, very large number of clients, thousands of clients generating wealth for themselves. And that is what I would like to see going forward as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, same. I think I really love the platform personally. As a manager, it is super efficient, super informative and transparent for the clients. And I see that more and more capital allocation actually in future for many more clients will happen through small case. And that's very exciting for all the investors and the whole small case ecosystem. So,
and one more point, we are not just fund managers. We have our own capital also invested on Smallcase, through Smallcase. And practically, all the strategies which we have launched are exposed. We have invested in those through some of our family accounts. So my mother's account, who is 75 years old, also has practically all the small cases which we have launched.
That's truly what we call skin in the game.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I think this was great, Ashwini, Vikas, and really thank you for sparing out time on this Sunday morning, and looking forward for having more such insightful conversation in future. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Have a great
so
day.
much.
Thank
Same
you.
to you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.